Hello, my name is Tolg and I exist, therefore I think too much. Um, I'm gonna read Beyond Good and Evil by Nietzsche, or Friedrich Nietzsche. And, sorry, he's distracting, because he's cute and this is abnormal behavior on his part. I left off on point 76 of chapter 4, and I love him. Oh my gosh. I don't know what's happening. So that's where we'll start, is 77. Thanks, bud. Thanks. Oh, I rant while I read. It's not a perfect read through. And I cuss when I talk. So, oh. So these are things that happen. Let's see. Point 77. With his principles, a man seeks either to dominate or justify or honor or reproach or conceal his habits. Two men with the same principles probably seek fundamentally different ends therewith. Principles should be defined. Principle. I am principled. I don't think a principle can be necessarily always synonymous with morality, just like morality cannot always be synonymous with ethics, though oftentimes they align. But to be principled might line more significantly with values as far as charm or conduct. Why one does what one does, especially in regards to societal expectations. And in that respect, good God damn, is that a fucking duh. Jesus, why would you assume that how one conducts themselves is going to be an objective reason behind it? That there would be an objective reason behind it? I guess, in a very general sense, people believe that someone treating them well must mean that the individual being treated well always deserves being treated well, rather than the more proper and safer assumption that there is something in it for the other party to be treating you well in a society that is largely sociopathic, if not entirely psychopathic here in the US. Maybe not chemically, but definitely trained in relation to how the principles are to how one would conduct themselves. Okay. Point 78. He who despises himself nevertheless esteems himself thereby as a despiser. I guess that's been fashionable to say, though said differently. Yes, bud, you're perfect. That, if you show hatred towards someone else, it must mean that you hate yourself. When, again, especially in reference to, you're so cool. He's just hopping around. I wish I could show you, but I'm technically impaired. Technologically impaired. Technically, too. Yeah, you get it, bud. You play. You're doing a good job. Hell yeah. So, in reference to point 77, how, one conducts themselves for subjectively different reasons, as per the perspective and intention, to then jump to point 78 and say, but this one instance is always going to be objective, is wrong. I disagree entirely. Especially, this is a rant, a very long rant maybe. effeminate culture, and I don't mean being a woman, I mean effeminate culture, because womanly things are so readily demonized in modernity. Effeminate culture has taken to settle with the lesser aspects of it, i.e. being petty, being bratty, being demanding, insecure. All of these are effeminate culture aspects, but these are all the very negative aspects of effeminate culture, where it could instead be nurturing, kindness, understanding, provision for another through that understanding, and support. With provision of resources, i.e. attention or whatever the fuck else, which you find as well in more modern, especially with younger generations. But at large, you find that with effeminate culture, it, especially historically, relying on how generations have been nurtured, and in regard to more Eurocentric ways of being, for women who were at large considered lesser parts of society, the tool utilized to steer society therein or thereafter was gossip. Getting together with the wife of a businessman as we are friends was a means of further directing who did business with whom, and thus the outcome of where the money flows could be rerouted based on which wife was disliked at a party. And this has funneled into modernity with less importance, especially with women being allotted more rights in how things flow and where things end up, especially where business is concerned, and more of a voice in society. And thus the role of gossip has become less important, but it is still in existence, and it still does steer people's public opinion. Thus defamation is a fucking thing. All of this to say, in effeminate culture, you hear it a lot. Oh, you're just jealous. The reason you don't like this is because you're just jealous. And I hear it a lot from other people, not necessarily towards my person, but I'll hear other people talking and tell them, oh, you're just jealous, where I have the knee-jerk reaction to be a bitch and include myself in things that I don't belong in, where I would like to, sit down and educate someone on they don't have to be jealous to dislike somebody. Wanting to say outwardly that you dislike somebody is either a means of control of your surroundings, or you lack self-control and say whatever the fuck comes to your mind, at which point it has goddamn nothing to do with any culture, and it has everything to do with self-growth or lack thereof. Or you intend to separate yourself from the individual being discussed. With the former, you are intending to change the opinion of the people that you are around, and with the latter, you are intending to change the opinion of your person concerning the people that are around you. All of this to say, none of that is rooted in jealousy at all. It is all rooted in ascertaining resources and value system of what resources are important, public opinion, and what that results in for the individual, if that's monetary support or emotional support, or anything that I have not named. But is not rooted in you show this and thus you are this. If you despise something, it could be for any fucking reason under the goddamn sun. Hell, it could be a past life transgression. I don't know. Some people believe that the reason they want to punch somebody in the face and have no goddamn clue why they want to do it is because in the past life that person fucked them over. Who fucking knows? It could be a lot of things. I don't know. Could be that they look like your abusive ex and you're fucking freaked out and you went into fight or flight. Who knows? There's loads of fucking reasons to dislike people. However, I guess after saying all of that, why you dislike something is not necessarily as important as what you end up doing because of how you feel. Emotions are important to a fucking degree. If you are honoring the emotions more than you give a shit about holding yourself accountable to your actions, you have over-honored your emotions. Emotions exist only as a means of helping you understand and perceive reality. That does not mean they should go unquestioned or unchallenged, and that does not mean that you are, after feeling something, put in a position where you don't have to be held accountable for the judgment you pass on others or the actions you take onto others because of that judgment. You are not without being held to a moral standing because you feel some way. Rant done. So, point 79, a soul which knows that it is loved, but does not itself love, betrays its sediment. Its dregs come up. That just reminds me of, oh my god, I cannot remember the name. Instead, I want to call it Earl Grey. And that can't be right. The picture of Dorian Gray. Haha. Portrait of Dorian Gray, where he gets so involved in essentially what I just got done talking about, ascertaining resources, going through how much he can amass, what he can accrue, and therein his effect on others, getting high on that, especially in part due to his beauty. And then because he relied heavily on how other people felt about him for everything that he discovered in life and what he could get from it. He got burnt out on the high he could get from it, sought other drugs, fucked a lot of people over, and in the end just felt remorseful because the only thing that he felt was loved by others, but he never felt love itself. Other than for his first love, which he felt most strongly once he found out she killed herself. So it could have been understood as regret for the inability to feel love once again. And a soul which knows that it is loved but does not itself love, betrays its sediment, is a very beautiful way of saying how fucking lonely it must be to be a sociopath, and not in the way that you are not surrounded by people, but in the way that you don't get to feel all that humanity is meant to. The gift of emotions. That's a sort of loneliness that is hard to put into words, hard to describe. It's not heartbreak. But it, I guess, metaphorically much like a dry riverbed. Something should be there. And a lot of things go without because it isn't. Point 80. A thing that is explained ceases to concern us. What did the God mean who gave the advice, know thyself? Did it perhaps imply, cease to be concerned about thyself, become objective? And Socrates? And the scientific man? Well, I mean, to give hope to that, where it has in and of itself lost hope, self-actualization isn't something that can actually be attained. maybe for a few seconds, but change is the only constant in life. And so once you reach self-actualization, there is no way in hell that you maintain self-actualization unless you die very soon after having self-actualized. Because to say that you have understood every single aspect of your person onto infinitum would mean that you have stunted yourself and not progressed and do not plan to progress. So either you have died in physicality, or you have died in mentality, or intellect, or spirit. Once something is explained, it does not matter. Is, again, speaking onto the mentality of needing to conquer. And it denies the femininity, the duality of existence. It is speaking only to the masculinity of a person. Know this and be done with it. Own this. Conquer it. Where once you know of something, the next step is to incorporate that thing into whatever needs it. And by incorporation, again, nurture and grow. So once you know of something, how is that relevant? Why is it relevant? And what can you do concerning it? What do you have control over now that you have learned it? Is it relevant to your life? If not, move on. If it is, and it can be incorporated, is it a positive or a negative force? If it's a negative, move on. If it is a positive, then, move into. And I guess if it's corporeal or non-corporeal is another important thing. If it's a corporeal thing, or I guess money can now be considered non-corporeal as well. And you do not need it. When moving on as a thing is find something that needs that thing that you no longer need, like tree roots. And that is still controlling the environment. Like, there was that movie where the kid teaches everybody that you do one good thing onto this person, and they make it a goal to do a good thing onto two people, and then that person and that person, now that makes 4 people, and go so on and so forth until that kid gets shot. I don't remember the name of the movie. Or how the kid caught a stray. Wasn't he in a school? We got a lot of school shootings in the US, so guess it makes sense that he caught a stray. Peace unto the dead, and the families. And the perpetrators. May there be healing. So yeah, know thyself does not mean give up on yourself. To define something is not necessarily to understand it, or to work along with it in its existence. Simply because you understand something does not mean that it stops existing. 81 is, it is terrible to die of thirst at sea. Is it necessary that you should so salt your truth that it will no longer quench thirst? Cute. Fucking cute. Salt. Bend the truth to your perspective so much so the value is only subjective, and therein it is only valuable to you. And in it being so, this highly subjective truth is now leaning more towards a lie, and it discredits you onto your environment and anybody that has anything to do with you, thus denying you resources. Honestly, the only thing my brain is thinking about right now is Lyme disease. Or you could choose another metaphor with salt your truth. The way to unsalt it is to boil it down. 82. Sympathy for all would be harshness and tyranny for thee, my good neighbor. Would it? To understand everyone would be to not understand yourself? To a degree, maybe, if you're incapable of self-control. I don't think that caring for other people necessarily puts you out, unless you have misunderstood honest care for, a need for a want, what someone wants, and then understanding that as something you need to give, and then feeling put out for it. That's not a gift. It's not honest care, because you've just given them a burden. And as somebody who has been at large treated like a burden and been in need simultaneously, that is something I absolutely fucking hate. It's why I now come to hate pity. If you have something to give it freely. Otherwise, get the fuck away from me. If you are not giving of love, if you are not giving freely, then you are not giving. That's not the definition of the word at all. You are trading, you are bartering. So what are you taking from the individual that you have expectations for and have not communicated these expectations to? Are you being dishonest to them and to yourself? And in this dishonesty, what have you thusly created? Because it is not reprieve. And it sure as shit will not result in actual help. 83. Instinct is in italics. When the house is on fire, one forgets even the dinner. Yes, but one recovers it from among the ashes. No, they don't. What? Okay, even in metaphor, no, they don't. In a house fire, all the ashes mixed together, non-metaphor. In a metaphor, when you lose so much, you lose everything. There isn't even, oftentimes in constant trauma, or in even one instance of trauma, it is very, very hard to recall what used to be important because you are stuck in shock. And if you have repetitive trauma, it oftentimes results in short-term memory loss due to the inability to recover things. Either it is too painful for the brain, too painful for the emotions, or something to do with the balance to, what is that Buddhist practice where you create art in sand and then destroy it afterwards to understand that nothing lasts? Change is the only constant, and to be at peace with that. It would be the negative aspect of that, where you understand nothing lasts. Change is the only constant, but in the way in which you understand it is only through loss, not development through soul or character, and not provision of a sense of security in self or surroundings, but entirely the opposite. Depravity and lack of shelter, lack of safety, always feeling insecure and at a loss. There is no reason to recover anything, because it would just point out how far you are without. It is easier when you are without to get rid of everything. You don't have to feel half as much. Point 84. One woman, it's AN. Woman learns how to hate in proportion as she forgets how to charm. Charm, as I've understood it in, especially, for Victorian period, and before Victorian period, because the Victorian period would have been the beginning of the end for this sentiment. But charm was something to be taught. It was etiquette. Like you go to charm school, you go to etiquette school. And again, for a society that at large deprived women of their rights, and where gossip was a tool to be utilized as a means of steering society in general, charm was yet another tool to do that. Etiquette was a means by which you could promote yourself to a position in any crowd, or be denied a position in any crowd. As well, there were certain unspoken rules, almost laws, because if you were to be of commoner's wealth or class and you learned the etiquette of someone that was not common, but held the title, or you dressed as though you held the title, you could be seen as stealing identity, promoting yourself to an identity you don't have, and could be arrested for essentially lying or theft. I can't remember. Even in recent, I guess, it's still very much the same, just not necessarily referenced half as much or understood half as much. But there was a case where this girlie was acting as though she was an heiress, and it was recent. It was like after 2020, or maybe 2018. Maybe it was after 2018. I don't know. But she was acting as though she was an heiress in something like New York, and she got away with this by, like, if she and friends in quotation marks, would go on trips, she'd be like, "Oh, I'll get you back later. You pay for this one." And among the wealthy, these trips were just, a drop in the bucket, so fuck it, whatever. And then so much would happen that I guess people let it go, because if you're wealthy and you make a big deal of someone not paying you back, are you truly wealthy? So she was holding people to their social faces. And it's like you don't talk about your paycheck, and then everybody starts talking about their paycheck and they realize they're not getting paid, and that's the reason the rule in the workplace actually exists, and so they hold their boss accountable. That's essentially what she was doing, but opposite. And so people started talking and they're like, "Oh, she hasn't paid you back, she hasn't paid me back. Is she really what she's about?" And they found out that she had been falsifying her entire life, that she lied about her identity, and so they got her for identity fraud. However, on the other end of the scale, I've been in a good amount of situations, talking about flop houses, trap houses, or drug houses, or just people doing drugs, where you see people who are wealthy come to party, and it's just, "Oh, you bought the money, we have the product that we would like your money for." And so nobody questions the identity. Identity fraud isn't half as bad on the other end of the scale, though you do have to still walk and talk. While I was a part of these groups, part may not be the right word, while I was around these groups, I was not necessarily widely accepted, because I am... how do I put this into words? My grandma was raised poor, dirt poor. She was daughter to first generation immigrant, and she was raised during the Dust Bowl and severely neglected. And because of all of this, she grew up highly valuing money and status. And her husband got her that, my grandpa. And they very much valued their money and their status. I don't know my grandpa half as well, and I never met him because he died before I was born. But my mom, because of a divorce, did not grow up with didn't raise us with the same status she had as she grew up. But the unspoken ways of learning things, I guess the nurture of it. One of the first gifts, and I think the only gift my grandma gave me, was a tiny little book about how to set a tea table. Fork on the outside. Whatever the fuck. I had a miniature tea set, and I had poured soda and hamster seed in it because I wanted to have a tea party with my hamster. But as far as like any etiquette or charm, I at large did not have a reason to use it. However, that does not mean that I did not grow up with a certain means of holding myself. And then I continuously did not stay at one school more than 2 years at most, and that was only 2 schools, but most of the schools I stayed at for only 1 year each. And so it was a different environment and different group of kids each time, which is why one of my favorite hobbies is just studying people, because it was a survival mechanism. I never really learned it, but I like studying it, human behavior. And I suck at it. And in all of this, I learned a way of operating that doesn't necessarily fit in anywhere. But because my mom was raised with this charm and etiquette and didn't take to it, I was nurtured with some form of that. And when I would hang out with kids at school, they would complain, "You don't cuss enough. You make me uncomfortable." You would never lie, would you? Holding me to expectations of acting outside of their norm. That would go from middle school to high school to college, and in college, there was a situation where some guys sat down, and I was anxious all the time. I'm anxious all the time if I leave the house. And a lot of the time that anxiety is treated as I'm intimidated by, but no, I'm just anxious. And so I was sitting down and they approached me and they're like, "Hey girl, let me chat at you." And I was so overwhelmed with anxiety. I just looked at them and said, "I'm sorry, I don't know slang. What are you saying?" And they're like, hey, how are you?" And slowed down what they were saying, because at that point, I guess they thought I was stupid. Probably not. I don't mean to put that on them. They were very, very polite and very sweet guys. But essentially, I conduct myself in such a way, no matter where I was, no matter what group I was in, flop house, trap house, doing drugs in a forest, whatever it was, I was never treated like I belonged, because I was always a sore thumb. But if I am in an environment where it's a wealthier setting, everybody's learned these manners and has had time to develop friendships, and all have upward trajectory in their businesses, I still stick out like a sore thumb because I do not know social grace. And that has been a perpetual thing in my life. All of this to say, concerning identity fraud, it can go either side of the aisle. You have to act like you belong. You have to learn the slang. But I never wanted to, because I felt like I was denying who I was by adapting to whom anyone else was. And I didn't want to lie to people. But in not lying to people, it felt like I got treated continuously like it mattered more to others that I would have lied. They would have liked it better had I lied. It's a very confusing thing. It's a very confusing thing. So I understand you'll only get hated for lying if there's money on the line. Otherwise, everybody likes it better if you lie about who you are. At least that's how I've understood things, which is essentially why I like staying inside. I don't necessarily like leaving the house. So the point, though, relevancy lost. Woman learns how to hate in proportion as she forgets how to charm. Forgets how to act on either side of the society. Learns how to hate. Oh, that'd be me. I guess, I could have definitely taken the route of hating others because I am not belonging. A lot of people do that. More, I'm just afraid of being misinterpreted and misunderstood, and that fear could easily lead a lot of people to hatred, but I'd rather just protect myself than put someone else in a position of receiving violence from me. And by protect myself, I mean remove myself, either mentally, emotionally, or physically. And I have done any number of those, or all of them, a lot throughout life, which is again why I prefer now to just physically remove myself from everything, because hatred hurts. They say stress causes cancer. I don't know what hatred causes, but I know it fucking hurts. I spent a lot of years hating very specific people, whom I now love very much, because of what I was told by others about who they were, and, found out later that's not at all who they are. But it created in my person this aspect. It's very much like the effect of depression, where you can feel it weaken your heart. It hurts physically. And it doesn't result in anything good, any good feeling, any good personality trait. It's just not a good time. And it doesn't result in having fun. It's bad. It's all bad. So, yeah, when someone forgets how to act in society, it can easily lead to hatred due to fear of not belonging, but I'd rather just be comfortable not belonging. It's just that other people are uncomfortable with me not belonging. At which point, I can't come to terms with that because it's not my terms to come to terms with. Point 86. Oh, where am I? Ooh, I'm at 40. I'm going to leave it there. So I stopped at point 85. Right? No. Whoa, I was about to skip one. Ha! Okay, I left at point 84. All right, I have ranted a lot. If I have overwhelmed you, trust that I am more overwhelmed. Have a good night. May your wants align with your needs. Eat well, drink well, sleep well, be well. Bye.